Good morning, everybody. I'm Phil Caldwell, Chief Executive of Ceres Power, and I'm delighted to introduce this topic about hydrogen production. We've got a very knowledgeable panel coming from all different aspects and backgrounds, covering renewable energy, conventional energy, nuclear energy, and the engineering services that support that. I myself have worked in the chemical industry in some of these places that we're talking about levelling up, and now I have the privilege of running one of the most exciting UK technology businesses, Ceres, and we develop hydrogen technologies, fuel cells, and electrolyzers. But to frame this topic, and it's a big topic, I just wanted to say, maybe start with a few points on the demand side, then really talk to, I think, what we've just been getting into, which is scale. And then I'll say a few words about how Ceres as a technology business approaches that scale. And then I think we'll get into the topic with the panel. So, there's lots of questions about where does hydrogen play, etc. Hydrogen, for me, decarbonizes the parts of society others cannot reach. It really is about the hard-to-abate parts of society. And our philosophy at Ceres is, if you can directly electrify something, you should. That's the most energy efficient way of doing it. But very often, to hit net zero, we just can't do that. And hydrogen provides that pathway to do that. So if you think about decarbonisation of society, 24% transportation, 24% industry, about 40% in the buildings that we work and live in, heat and power. That's a big challenge, and where there's low-hanging fruit on electrification, we're making good progress, and we should do, and we have great assets in the UK from renewable energy. But that combination to use hydrogen as a pathway to decarbonisation is predicted to be about 18% of primary energy by 2050. And not to forget, a $2.5 trillion business opportunity, and that's something I want to come back to as well. So this is not just a UK problem about carbon, this is a global business opportunity that we need to address. When we look at use cases, we just talked about some of these, but first and foremost, decarbonisation of industrial processes, green steel, green ammonia, petrochemicals. They're already using grey hydrogen today or other components like coking fuel, etc. Hydrogen can play a big role in industrial decarbonisation around industrial hubs. There's a question there about transportation. We can electrify lighter end of vehicles, but as we go heavier, then using things like hydrogen and other fuels can start to play into things like decarbonisation of long-distance heavy goods vehicles, and some of the really difficult parts of society to decarbonise, like shipping and like aviation, potentially as a pathway into future fuels like ammonia and synthetic aviation fuels, etc. Had Angie from Cadent talking about integration into gas networks, is how do you link these together? But also it plays a role potentially in long duration energy storage, which is going to be how do we balance intermittency of renewables and how do we electrify more by using hydrogen? And then not just the UK, but big parts of the world are looking at, can they actually export renewable energy in the form of hydrogen? Will we see a future where hydrogen is produced at low cost in the Middle East, in Australia, Chile, etc., and shipped, and how does that work? So it's not just a UK issue. Everybody faces the same issue, but I do think that we have a big opportunity here. And you're going to hear lots of big numbers, mega, giga, hyperscaling, etc. The fact is, it is a mega trend. It's 600 million tonnes that is the projection by 2050. There's a lot of demand that supports this movement. Industry has to transition. Most of the big industries in this room have plans for a net zero future, and predominantly they're being recognised with hydrogen as one of the key factors. We're seeing more and more targets and more government policies, again, not just in the UK, but in most developed economies. Good news is renewable energy is getting cheaper, more efficient all the time. And then what's come into focus very recently, again, sharp focus, is energy security. So that move away from being dependent on fossil fuels towards alternatives is now more urgent than ever. And I've quoted some numbers there, but what you can see here, there's various different well-respected bodies from IEA, International Energy Authority, IRENA, Bloomberg New Energy Finance, Hydrogen Council. You know, they're projecting the demand for hydrogen between 500 and 800 million tons a year. Whatever you believe in that, that's a very big number. The split, green, blue, pink, whether you're using fossil fuel, renewable energy, potentially nuclear, will depend largely on the assets that countries have and the geopolitics. You know, in the UK, we have assets coming out of oil and gas. We have capabilities in nuclear. We've got a thriving renewable energy industry. So we're quite privileged in the UK to look at all of these different pathways to hydrogen. But then if you look at the right-hand side of this curve, what you can see here is this is a marathon, not a sprint. You know, this is not something that's going to be over in the next 5 or 10 years. If you look at all of these projections, the first thing is today we only make about less than 100 million tons of hydrogen, and it's grey hydrogen, and it's used predominantly in industry. So one of the early markets that we can really go after is decarbonisation of industry. And then you can start to roll this out into lots of these other applications that we talked about that can benefit from decarbonisation through hydrogen, using this combination of green and blue, and then onwards. But if you look at the projections here, you're talking more than doubling 2030 to 2040, 2040 to 2050. There was a question around cost, and this is not an exact science, but at Ceres we're developing high efficiency electrolysis with the aim of low-cost green hydrogen. And we're doing that to high efficiency because 2/3 of the cost of that hydrogen is the energy input. And we were targeting less than $2 a kilo as a target for green hydrogen production from our technology. And that's because green and grey hydrogen crosses over about $2 a kilo. For a lot of industrial decarbonisation, you need to get the cost of green hydrogen down so that those industries are in the money, like green steel, green ammonia, etc. What's changing, this curve you can see here with grey and green and that crossover point was about 18 months old now. If you were to actually take European gas prices and put it on there, this grey dot I've got on the left-hand side shows you that actually that whole curve shifts. So there is more and more demand for green hydrogen coming because the energy system, the gas prices that a lot of the grey and blue will be based upon is also moving. So it's a very dynamic picture. What that all translates to is a big opportunity. 3,500 gigawatts are going to be needed by 2050 of green hydrogen production. Today we've got about 1 gigawatt, and that means about 100 gigawatts equivalent has to be added every year to hit that 2050 target for net zero. So that's the size of the demand. There's no question that the demand exists. It's recognised it's needed for net zero, and we need that scale. So really, it's no longer an issue of technology credibility. It's no longer, I think, an issue of demand. I think it's about credibility of scale, and that's what the panel will discuss today. A few words about Ceres. We're a leading electrochemical technology business, and our mission is to ensure there's clean energy everywhere to hit that net zero. And we do that through collaboration, and that's key for me. This is a global challenge, so we work with some of the world's most progressive companies to bring technology at scale and pace. I don't think you can wait and do this first just in the UK. I think you have to work internationally, and everybody's facing the same issue. Electrochemistry, you know, we say we're leaders in electrochemistry. What does that mean? We use this analogy of a bridge. If you've got a green electron, you should use it. But you can take a green electron and make a green molecule, like hydrogen, and potentially green ammonia and others. And that's an electrolyzer. If you run it in reverse, you can actually produce power, and that becomes a fuel cell. So we do both of these technologies. The technology we have actually came from next door at Imperial College. It's 20 years old, and that's how long some of these deep tech technologies take. And what we've done is we've established global partnerships in things like heat and power with Miura in Japan, Bosch in Germany, looking at decarbonisation of data centres, utility scale with Doosan in South Korea, and into heavy-duty vehicles with Weichai in China. And then if you run that in reverse, you can have a green electrolyser. And we signed our first partnership just this week with Shell, looking at can we produce very high efficiency, low carbon green hydrogen. I mentioned that 600 million tonnes. I also want to get this in perspective. If you look at where this energy, the hydrogen demand is going to be, Europe's about 100 million of that. Ultimately, China and the rest of the world are obviously going to be a big part of this for the decarbonisation. And that's how we scale as a business. So I talk about scale. We need to really scale lots of things. I'm talking from the technology point of view. We're establishing partnerships and manufacturing globally, Bosch in Germany, Doosan in South Korea, Weichai in China, and really we embed our technology to address this challenge at scale and pace that is required. So that's a few words about demand, scale. There's a lot of expertise on this panel. From my point of view, I think it's how do we get going in the UK? How do we establish hydrogen production? And don't forget, how do we maximize the business opportunity as well that's created for the UK from this opportunity? Thank you.